Let's continue our coding for the rectangle class. Just to review what we have already, the UML will be attached to this video in Blackboard so you can go back and review that or reference it as you wish. What we've coded already are the definitions or declarations for our instance variables. Instance variables, or IVs, I'll use the shorthand, it's easier. IVs are always private. Always private. We name them according to the UML, precisely matching the UML in terms of the name. We also precisely match the UML in terms of the order of the instance variables, or IVs. Always stick with that. It makes life much easier. Following the IVs, or our attributes, as you will see it in the UML, come the operations, or the methods. The first methods we define will be our constructors. Standard organization for the constructors says null constructor, if it exists, is written first. Partial constructors, if they exist, follow. Full constructor is the last constructor we declare or define. In our case, the full constructor accepts two values of type double. It does not do direct assignments. Our constructors will never do direct assignments. Again, this is helping to build that fence or that barricade between outsiders in our data, between outside actors, outside users of our code and our data. We want to make sure there's a distance there. We want to make sure that we can monitor that access. So our constructors do not ever do direct assignments. Following our constructors, we're going to have set and get methods. There are two ways to organize these. Either version of the organization is perfectly acceptable. I'm good with either one being offered or used in this course. It's up to you which you prefer. The method I use, and there's no particular reason for it, I write all of the set methods, set for the first IV, set for the second IV, etc., followed by the get methods. Get for the first IV, get for the second IV, etc. That's one way to organize. The alternate organization style is to say set first IV, get first IV, set second IV, get second IV. That is perfectly acceptable. If you like that, go with that. As I mentioned, my usual style, all of the sets followed by all of the gets, and that's what I'll be doing here. I like to set up little flag comment sort of things to let me know what section of my code I'm entering. They can be a lot more elaborate than that, but I find it very useful when I'm trying to do debugging to have those little flags. It makes it easy for me to find what part of the code I need to look at. So our set methods are really very standard in what we need to do. That should be lowercase, these will always be public in terms of access. Set methods should always be public. They have to be accessible to outside actors in case we need to modify the values. A good example, the student object that would represent you to UTSA, at the end of this semester, we need to call a set method for your credit hours to update that and give you credit for the courses you've taken. We need to call the set method for your GPA to update your GPA to reflect your current GPA after you've completed this semester. These methods have to be public in order to be useful to make sure your class is fully functional. We also add the keyword final. Final is very important to us. This says this method cannot be overwritten or overridden. No one can change the rules. I mentioned that we wanted to have a single access point. This is making sure of the single access point. Any rules or regulations or validation or requirements we have for setting an instance variable will go into our set method. Then we want to make sure that everybody has to follow those rules. Everyone, every time, in all instances. By coding our methods as final, we enforce that. Our way or no way. Do it the way we want it done. Follow our rules, or you don't get to play. That's essentially what we're saying. This is going to give us another layer to our barrier, more height to our barrier, if you like that. It reinforces those barriers we're trying to put in place. Set methods by definition will always be void. They do not return data. That is not their purpose. So they are always void of type. They do not return anything. Our naming for the set methods is pretty direct. The word set followed by the precise variable name adjusted for camel casing. So our set method for the length variable, lowercase s, set, uppercase L, length. Okay. Use the standard naming conventions. I test for standard naming in the code that you submit. If you fail to use standard naming, your code cannot compile with that test process. Make certain you are using standard naming in your set methods and your get methods. Set methods also by definition will always accept one parameter of the type of the instance variable, and I'm going to stick with that shortened name. This is going to help me monitor my data flow and follow the path of the data through the system. So that just is a convenience for me. You can use whatever local name you like. Do not use the word length, L-E-N-G-T-H, lowercase l. Avoid the use of the keyword this. I don't like that keyword at this point in your evolution as a programmer. It will only make debugging your code harder, so please just don't. The only thing we're going to put in our set methods is the assignment statement that takes that incoming parameter and assigns it to our instance variable. We're going to add to that later when we do data validation. If you have security requirements for accepting data, someone has to have a certain security level or a certain role in order to offer or update data in an object. This would be a good place to do that. This is a great place for data validation. We're not at that point yet, so we're going to stick with the simple assignments. Then we have, again, public. It needs to be accessible. Final, no one gets to write their own rules. These are the rules. Everybody follows these rules. Void, because we are not returning anything. Standard naming says set, followed by the instance variable name adjusted for camel casing. We accept one parameter of the type associated with the IV, and we provide a local name for that parameter. Inside our set method, all we really need to do is make that singular assignment. And that covers our set methods. I'm going to break here and pick up with another video for the get methods. Thank you.